Is it recording? I think I heard the
Yes,
lady.
she said recording in progress, and then I hit got it.
All right,
We're
here
ready
we
to rock.
are. What?
We're ready.
Yes, we are ready. Here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I am your host, Brian Snyder. And if you like the show, please rate, subscribe, review. It helps. If you don't like it, send it to your opposing political party or someone that you just don't want to be around. But do something with it. And also, by the way, if you like seeing my wife and I being exhausting, please go to the Exhausting Snyders on TikTok, and check that out. It's pretty exhausting. Now, I'm really excited because someone is back, and I've been waiting. It's been a fucking year since we had the conversation, but here we are with producer, screenwriter, actor, director, visual artist, writer. I get just on and on and on and on. Sarah Louise Wilson, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I can't believe it's been a year. It doesn't
Yeah,
seem like that long. Yeah.
a lot of shit has happened.
A lot of shit has happened. Good
Um,
and bad. Good
yeah,
and bad.
yeah. I want to mention this because it happened recently. We both lost our CalArts voice teacher,
Yeah.
Fran Bennett.
Franny.
When did I mean that was I mean, did you know what happened or
I have
does
no
any
idea. No, I
okay.
saw it on Facebook and was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So Facebook.
How was your relationship with her?
It was like I think most people can attest to this that had her as a teacher, up and down and
Hmm.
like a bit tumultuous, but I knew that she cared about me,
Hmm.
and we had lots of conversations about that.
Hmm.
um but to be honest, it came full circle when we shot the movie Jelly, which was my first movie, and
Hmm.
Fran was in it. She was actually acting in it.
Hmm.
And when I got to sit down with her in her trailer, she was like, I was only hard on you because I was preparing you for the business.
Hmm.
I was only hard on you because being a black woman in the business isn't easy. So, you know, I was preparing you. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And it really it made me forgive things. I mean, I'm a pretty sensitive person. I take things personally, even though the four agreements say don't take anything personally, which I'm working on.
Hmm.
Um, but I think being an empath and an artist, it's hard not to
Hmm.
feel the blows of everything. But that conversation and that was the last time I talked to her. I mean, that conversation I had with her in her trailer on the set of like my first movie
Hmm.
um, was very cathartic and healing for me. Like I was like, wow, so much of this is not a facade, but she was even you know acting when she was teaching us. I mean, she was really going through the motions and trying to help us get to our greater purpose, most of us. And then, I mean, she's human. She's not, I don't believe that people should be like canonized into sainthood when they are, posthumously. I'm really not a believer in that. It's like, you know, we all sin and fall short of the glory of one another and God and everything. And I don't think she was, this perfect human being, but I think that she had a beautiful heart. And I really think that she actually cared about her students, and
Hmm.
having graduated and then gone and I went and got my master's and then I've taught. I'm like, wow, she really did care because what it takes to teach and to put out as a teacher and to keep coming back and teaching. I
Hmm.
mean, she did this for decades. It takes a lot of guts to have that kind of fire. I feel like she had that fire for her students until the very end, which
Yeah.
I think takes a lot. So how was your relationship with the Fran?
Um, I felt that it reminded me. I was just telling Rachel this yesterday. I was thinking about my elementary years and of school. I remember somewhere like the fourth or fifth grade. I had a teacher, he's a math teacher, and he got so upset with something that I did in my workbook. I don't know what it was, but he threw it across the room. And it was traumatizing at the moment, but on the other hand, I also felt like he actually cared, that he had all that emotion, that anger, but like if he I mean, a normal, most teachers wouldn't get upset or whatever, but he just being that he had that anger made me think that he cared. Now, I don't know if he did, but I think he did. And
Yeah.
it kind of reminded me of Fran in the sense that I feel like she did, it sometimes was harsh, but I felt that she did care. And I had a conversation with her probably around 2008, because I was living, near CalArts at the time, and I went to CalArts, and I wanted to apologize to her because I dropped out of the Richard Foreman project, and I really didn't explain why. And so I just, at the time I was going blind, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't want to, explain to Richard Foreman that, I was going blind, and I was scared and all this shit. And she, she took it very well. And, she's like, I think she was basically saying that I should have told her, and which is, I mean, I already kind of told everybody during Edward II, but I don't know. I guess I was in a very strong place of denial. So, but yeah, I really, I think she really did care, and that passion was very evident. And it was just beautiful to watch her speak, and just kind of almost make love to words.
Yes.
She just made love with language, and I love that. And I even have somewhere, do you remember she made us um photocopies of handwritten notes for exercises, for vocal exercises?
Oh, and where we would like pass them in front of us and say the words.
No, no, these were all like a list of all the different exercises. And I think she gave it to us at the end of her class, so that
Yeah.
we'd have them. And so I still have them somewhere, because I always thought if I was ever going to act again, I would need them, because they were so critical to, like, I mean, I think about how I was as an actor in high school, and then going to CalArts, and how much open I was. And I remember being able to put my chest on my knees, you know what I mean? And like lay flat on my knees, and how open I felt, and like how strong I felt through all that. And I felt, I mean, she was an essential part of that process, and just opening up the voice and the breath. I mean, I think everybody who talked about Fran on Facebook said, to one degree or another, either drop it to come back, or they
Yeah.
said because she had passed away, drop it to go. And then a breath is a thought. And that one real, I think about that a lot. A breath is a thought, and it's haunting. And
It is.
so yeah, I miss her, and I think that she had affected everyone in one way or another. And she's just, I mean, it's a very fond memory, that time, you know.
Oh my gosh, it was, I mean, I often think back to our Cal Arts days. Like I'm like, that was a capsule of fun. And it was terrifying, and so much new stuff coming all at once. It was incredibly exciting.
Mhm.
Um, what you were talking about being able to feel your chest on your knee, it made me think about, that's something I've carried with me my whole life, is like, okay, if I'm flexible, then I'm okay. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like health wise and everything. If I can like reach my toes and breathe deep into my body, then I'm going to be okay. And just sort of breathe my way through this, feel my way through this. And that's something that I took from her. That's something that she taught me, that not only she taught me, but when I have taught others people, like I've had the opportunity to teach at times, I've passed that on as well.
Mhm.
The power of, flexibility and making sure that your whole body has oxygen running through it, and you can feel your breath, like you can feel it coming from your feet. You can feel it at the crown of your head, if you're breathing right, and
Mhm.
that's Fran Bennett, she was
Yeah.
be like and she was, disciplined. I mean, she got up every day and did this stuff. It's not like she just taught it, she did it.
Yeah.
So, and you could hear it in her voice, in the way she moved, and her, like, I mean, look at how her body was. I mean, she was in great shape,
Mhm.
and she was I mean, she was a commanding figure walking down the hallways. And if you could make her laugh, it felt like you achieved something great in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was like, Fran Bennett, and I remember Matthew Dittman would make her laugh a lot. And I would be like, man, this guy is golden.
Yeah.
I mean, he could make her laugh.
I know.
It was awesome. It was
Yeah.
awesome
And
to watch. Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to encourage him to get back into stand up. I hope he does. He's doing a lot of music now. So
Oh, yeah.
if you have an opportunity, have you talked with him recently?
I've just been sending text messages of love, because,
Okay.
I think and, I know he's going through hell. So it's just like, just every so often, just, I like, I love you or whatever. But he's
Yeah.
making music. That's awesome. He's like, what, playing a guitar and singing or something?
Yeah. Yeah, he
Cool.
is. And I hope he lays some
Rock
tracks down
star.
because he's he just kind of played around when we were roommates, but he's really getting proficient on the instrument. And yeah, if you have an opportunity, ask him about it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, he can do anything. I mean, I think he's a star. I've always thought he was a star. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't think, for me, I've found my footing in the last couple of years, and discovering things about myself I didn't know. Um, and also leaning into writing in a way that I hadn't before. I think it's a false narrative that I told myself too. Like, okay, I have to get out of Cal Arts. I majored in theater. I'm gonna go and do acting, and that's all I'm gonna do. And then, things change. It's like, um, things change, and it's important to be malleable. It's important to, I think, go where you're being called, and it's not always the thing you went to school for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I I think that's definitely something I need because my whole body is stiff, and I think it makes my thinking rigid, and so I think, yeah, I need to get flexible again. I've been doing a little bit yoga in the morning, but I think that mind body connection is the neuroplasticity is also aligned with the
I agree.
musculature,
And
muscular.
the spiritual, and like, I think, on a spiritual level, and on the level that we can't see, literally, like, even our visual spectrum is so limited. Um, I think when we're in touch with our body and breath and all that, we're connected on a whole other level. I mean, I think it's really exciting. And I've gone through stages where I've, gained lots of weight, but always have remained flexible. Like, no matter what, I'm getting on the ground and stretching and getting in touch emotionally. And then it helps me get through stuff. I mean, it just helps me figure things out.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Well, speaking of getting in touch with things, I loved your book S&M,
Thank you.
and I was deeply moved by it. I laughed. I thought it was. I hope it's a movie.
I
That's the
hope
other
so
thing.
too. Yeah.
Um, but let's talk about it because I feel it's a really. I said this. It's a brilliant, vulnerable, sensual, haunting, just beautiful exploration of the um, the inherited trauma of slavery and systemic racism, the how it affects every generation. And I felt like you explored this in a way that was very accessible. And I felt anybody could read this and find something beautiful in it. And I have so many questions. But how did this begin?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. It's amazing to hear that it had an effect and that you got it. And I mean, we've known each other for 20 years, more than 20
Mm,
years. Um, so that's really incredible that you got something out of it. How it came about, honestly, I was in Lebanon with my husband, 2019 in the summer. The revolution in Beirut had just happened. And so people were in the streets. There were fires in the streets. People wanted a change in their government. And so um, my husband was working. I was at home, you know, um, cooking and cleaning and going to the gym and having coffee during the day, and then getting involved in what was going on in Lebanese politics, but not too much, because it's not like, I'm American, and what do I know, right? About that. I'm just sort of trying to take it all in. And it got me thinking about oppression. It got me thinking about um, how when trauma is not addressed, it has a cyclical nature, and hurt people, all that stuff. And then, my husband and I would have these long conversations about what's the seed of all this? Why isn't there peace in the Middle East? How did this start? What
mm,
about Palestine? I mean, tell me everything. I
mm,
want to know everything. Then it made me start to look at my own history. Um, then people, you start to hear about, like, Sandra Bland, and like, um, I was abroad for years, working, but I would keep hearing about police brutality. Now, meanwhile, it's always been happening. We just have the cameras now, right? So, and it's easy when you're on the other side of the world to pretend like that's not happening, because racism, especially for a Black person in America, leaves you with a certain amount of PTSD that's inescapable. That's something that cannot be explained unless you're in the skin of a BIPOC person, right? And
mm,
so when I left this country for a while, I was like, oh, I could take a deep breath. I went to Kazakhstan, didn't feel racism like I felt it in America. When I went to Lebanon, I didn't feel racism like I felt it in America. It was more about religion, which is a whole other thing. But there was I was kind of relaxed in a way I hadn't been. But
mm,
then, I kept hearing about all this police brutality. And then seeing these videos of you know, people who look like me, people who look like my family, people who look like my baby brothers, and, murdered in the streets, you know what I mean? And it started to make me very, very angry. And I thought, I got to do something with this. I have to paint this out of me. I got to write this out of me. I got to figure out where my, depression comes from, all this stuff. Now, I've been to therapy and, clinically, diagnosed with PTSD and like depression or whatever. So that's cool, right? So it's like,
mm,
okay, great. You've diagnosed me. Now what do I do with this? Okay, you're going to give me some pills. That's great. But I still have to like work my way back into the worm and like kill it at its head. I got to find the seed and destroy this thing. Like, it's not enough to just like put me on medication.
mhm,
I got to get to the root of it. So I started to write about things. And I thought, well, I could write something and it be there's been lots and lots of books that have come out on systemic racism that are far more, based in, like, I don't know, scientific studies and really interesting things, and more kind of documentary style. But I thought, I'm a filmmaker. People unfortunately learn by television. They learn by
yeah,
entertainment. We learn by entertainment. It speaks to us. That's the magic of storytelling, that we can like learn a whole awesome lesson by watching a movie or reading a story or whatever. And I thought, well, I want to write something that kind of encapsulates my experience as a mixed person, not ever knowing I was a color until some kid told me you're a color, you know. It's not like you grow up knowing that. You don't grow up knowing these things. You go out and you learn all these like unspoken codes in society, things that you didn't know even existed. So I thought, I want to write something about it. So I started writing. I started writing in Lebanon. I had all this free time, and I couldn't go out by myself because it wasn't so safe to go out as an American without my husband at the time that I was in Beirut in 2019.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, and the people were angry, and the people are still angry because the country's in disarray and they have a right to be angry. But anyway, that's another topic. So I started writing. So I started writing, and I wrote like an entire different version of the book, by the way, an entirely different version of the book.
Well, you know what's interesting about it is when you were on last time and you described the book, for
Yeah.
some reason I thought it was like a racial justice manual, like
Yeah.
and I had no idea it was like a narrative, like almost kind of like a historical fiction, you know.
Yeah, for
A-
sure.
And I had no I was like, wait, did I get the right book? Did I
Were you
and
pleasantly surprised that it
oh
was like,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was you know, at first I was like, what's happening? They got a beetle and they're eating, two girls are eating a beetle, and I'm like,
mhm,
what's their they got a goblin king, and like what's going on? You know, I thought it was like a manual or something, you know,
totally.
and so, but yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Just
Thank
the
you.
way you, I mean, that's the thing, you know, I think you have, you know, when people have dialogues about, you know, sensitive subjects or, you know, something that's contentious, you know, people just say how things the way they should be and what's wrong. But the way you address the subject in a way that's just so natural, and it and it and it comes from your experience and your own, I mean, you know, I got to say the one thing that really spoke to me, and I mean, I think about this a lot, like, um, you know, being blind and not being able to see expression is very, very, very painful because I miss, for many reasons, just being able to see people's eyes. And, you know, you know, Lou used to say this, you know, the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Yep.
And I miss that. But then there's a scene when Stella, the main character, goes into, it's like a poetry reading, I think.
Hmm.
And and she wears prescription glasses and she takes them off because she does not want to see people's expressions of her. And I thought, wow, like, I mean, that's something that I did not think about, is like what it's like to see someone's disdain, to see someone's hatred, or to see that. And it's so much so to almost blinding yourself. And
Yeah.
that was very powerful.
I love that you bring that up. I mean, that's something that's a real thing. I definitely did for, I don't know, up until I was about 30. I did that. I would be like, all right, I'm going out, and I would take my glasses off. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see, like, there are these subtleties that you see with people when you're black in America. You can't,
Mm,
it's like, and I'd much rather not see it. And, my dad used to say I was, from a different planet. I was like from a place where everyone was like loving each other. And he's like, hey, this
mm,
isn't the real world. And as I got older and stepped out, I mean, I had crazy things happen as a young kid. I mean, I remember the first time I was called the N word. I was like, 8 years old, and there was this little boy, and um he called me a dirty N-word, and I slapped him across the face. He started crying. The yard duty came over, And she was like, what did you do? I saw you hit him.
Mm,
And she was an older white lady, you know? And I said, he called me, and I told her what he said. And she
mm.
looked right at him and she said, well, you deserved it, you know what I mean? And it was like, wow, that's cool. But
Right.
I mean, and that's like, that's a rare story, you know, that I mean, but I didn't know, you know, what's this look like, what's this look, you know? My dad used to say, you can see it in people's eyes, you
Mhm,
can see when someone has a problem. And so for me, my solution was, well, I'll just take these off and then no one has a problem,
mhm.
everyone's cool, you know? I don't have to see if they're racist, because you can see it. I mean, unfortunately, ask anybody that has, you know, that's a BIPOC person, they can see it, you know? I'm sure, having gone through what you're going through, you could probably sense when people are prejudiced, right?
Mhm.
Uh, treating you differently,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's another sense that we develop when it's like, oh, okay, this person has a problem, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that in the sense that, I don't want to hear either people's disability porn, or, like you're so amazing for going out into the world, or or just people, doing discriminatory things, or whatever it may be. And I mean, that's a horrible thing, that to always have to be vigilant and on alert. And I
Yeah,
think you expressed that, especially with the neighbor Helen.
yeah. Good old Helen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's real. That happened. I mean,
Yeah.
that actually, that definitely happened in
Now
her
that
life.
happened in LA.
That happened in LA. That happened
Yeah.
in Valley Village.
Yeah. I mean, I think people have this sense that the cities are free of racism. And I think, it's that's why it is racism. The ism is systemic. It's everywhere. Eh,
Everywhere.
Yeah. And it's horrible. I mean, it may not be as easy to find, as in, like Mississippi or Alabama, but it's there, and it's amazing. I mean, that was a horrible thing that you experienced with that neighbor, to have to be, to be in the place where you need safety, and
Yep.
that's where you're going home, and to have to worry about, being accosted, or, hearing racial epithets or whatever. It's horrible.
Yeah, it was another level of, and you know what's so jarring about it? I think what's even, all of it's messed up, right? But and I mentioned this thing in my book about my grandmother. I quoted her when she would say, like, she was from the South.
Mm,
She was from Louisiana, backwoods Louisiana, like Winfield, like deep in the sticks, where
mm,
they, you know, the whites lived on this side and the blacks lived on this side. To
mm,
this day, I mean, it's like this. And so, but she would say, hey, I prefer the South because I know where I stand in the South.
mm,
And here you have no idea, you know, like, at least people in the South are going to say it to my face.
mm.
And here it's like, it's a guessing game, you know? Um, and then for me, what happened with my neighbor, Helen, which isn't her real name, obviously.
Mm.
But what happened with us, where she would just terrorize me and call me horrible racial slurs. Um, you know, I remember my roommate calling the police and saying, like, this is bad. And they were like, well, has she done any, you know, property damage or, you know, physical harm? You know what I mean? Well, then
Mhm.
it's fine. I mean, what do you want us to do? And it's like, I could not enter the building without her terrorizing me. And it was
Yeah.
like, the police were like, sorry, like, has she punched you or hurt you or assaulted you? Or, and it's like, well, yeah, my body's feeling the stress. Like, I can't sleep. I'm having a hard time eating. I'm like, you know, not to get too graphic, but I mean, I had like major digestive stuff go. I like, it had like an ulcer, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, things are bad. Things are very bad. And um, yeah, and I think what was even more jarring is that it was so unexpected being there a skip and a jump away from Hollywood. It's so unexpected. Like, wait, what are you saying? What are you calling me? You know,
Mhm.
why is this happening? So yeah, I mean, and it's a misconception. It's definitely everywhere. I think since the murder of George Floyd, people have, which is, God bless that man, he said he was going to be big, right? I mean, he said, I'm going to be gigantic. And yeah, I mean, posthumously, here we are. He's I mean, I think I was teaching an online screenwriting class to people in Kazakhstan, and they all knew who George Floyd was.
Mhm.
So it's like, yep, you were right. You were known worldwide, right? But for a reason that's like so heartbreaking. But I think because of that, a lot of people started to wake the fuck up and realize that we have a problem, and then it's not imagined, it's real, which is, that's a good thing that's come out of it, you know?
Did you see Dave Chappelle's 8 minutes and 46 seconds?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear it.
I mean, Dave Chappelle, to me, I think he's just prophetic. I think the
Mhm.
guy is tapped into another thing. I mean, I think he's like part comedian. He's like Dick Gregory in that way, he's like part stand-up, or like Lenny Bruce, part stand-up, part like spiritual advisor. You
Yeah.
listen to him and you kind of feel like you get religion in a way. It's like, oof, this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, to me, it was, I love what he does. I love his point of view about that situation, about racism in America. I mean, my thoughts on that was he kind of said it all. I mean, that's 846 should be viewed by everybody in high school, if they want to take like a cultural studies class or African American studies class, or even social studies class. I mean, actually social studies class. It's like they should have to watch 846. They should have to watch 846, the actual video of George Floyd, 846, and then watch Dave Chappelle right after 846. And
Yeah.
because it really makes you go, and then when you start to think about the history of the misdemeanor, which is what George Floyd was accused of, the counterfeit $20 bill, the
Hmm.
misdemeanor and the history of the misdemeanor. I was watching this whole video about it. Brave New Films did a documentary about the history of the misdemeanor in America and how it was made for Black people as a way to enslave and imprison Black people with these like teeny tiny petty charges and get people, in the system for 20 years for like these teeny tiny misdemeanors. And it was very sad. And it was like, I mean, obviously the prison industrial complex is a whole other problem. I mean, that is modern day slavery,
Yeah.
period.
I was when I read Angela Davis's Why Prisons Are Obsolete, you really understand, you know, the
Yep.
profit motive of prisons. I mean, if there's like I've seen it somewhere, a list of all the different companies that benefit from slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, I mean, it's like Victoria's Secret. I mean, it's just like huge names, you know.
Yep. And if you can just like, because my husband and I, we were like, okay, these are, we just can't shop there anymore. We just can't do
Yeah.
business there anymore. And it's, I know it's hard to make all those changes, because realistically we've all just been bamboozled into this system,
Mhm.
but even if you just take one of those retailers out of your circulation of where you buy from, you're doing something, you know
Mhm.
so it's important to like get that list and to go, okay, I'm not gonna put any money towards that anymore,
Yeah.
because it does make a huge difference.
I
The
remember
power
Dial
is in the
Soap.
money.
I remember
Yeah.
Dial Soap was the one in Angela Davis's Why Prisons Are Obsolete. I was like, oh, that one's out.
Yep. Bye bye dial. Bye forever.
And but one of the things that I thought about when reading S&M was the parallel where you're doing the blog about Sassy Slave.
Hmm.
And it really, that made me think about Dave Chappelle relating. So when George Floyd was being, with his knee on, on his neck, but
Mhm.
with that officer, he was saying in his last breaths, he was saying, mommy,
Yeah.
mommy. And I remember Dave Chappelle relating that to his own experience of his father when he was dying, saying mommy. And his mommy was was a slave, right?
Yeah.
And that made me think of that inherited legacy of trauma, and that it's always there. It's not that, then that was his whole point. It wasn't that far ago. Only
No, only a handful of generations. I mean, and really, if we're looking at it, Black codes, which is what came after the Emancipation Proclamation and Jim Crow, that was all slavery. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Sharecropping was modern day slavery. That was, and that, I mean, there's people. So anyway, the point is that there's still a slave system, and it's the prison system. So it's not, it's current, it's happening right now. And that's it. I mean, 70% of all people in prison, like, they don't even have like they couldn't like afford parole, like bail. So they're just like in prison without actually having a charge against them. That's 70% of people in there. So, and that's just crazy. You know what
yeah.
I mean? That's just
Isn't
crazy. So
isn't the statistic something like the United States houses like 85% of the world's prisoners, but is only 5% of the world's population or something like that? Have you heard
something
that?
crazy. Yeah, I've heard that also.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, when you think about America being incorporated in that, it is a big business, and we are all then, cogs in the machine, all of us, every single last American citizen. We've got a price on our head about how much money we're worth to the United States government treasury. You know what I mean? I mean, that's really what
Yeah.
it comes down to. Um, it's kind of bananas. And then I was even thinking about that whole thing of land of the free, home of the brave, that was added to the Statue of Liberty, like in the 1880s. Slavery ended, right? The Emancipation Proclamation happened in what, 1865? Okay. But then, like, this thing was added to the Statue of Liberty: give us your,
You're
your
tired, you're
poor, you're
poor, you're
tired, you're,
wretched.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, yearning to be free,
Yeah.
and now that I know more things, I'm like, that's funny, in the most awful way. That's funny. Like,
Mm.
really? We are a country absolutely built on slavery,
Mhm.
246 years of chattel slavery. And less than 20 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, when obviously there were black codes in place, Jim Crow's happened, all this terrible stuff, Black people are still not free, still not being treated fairly. And, we have this whole thing of, give us your tired, you're poor, you're hungry, yearning to be free thing. And it's like, you can't even, your own people aren't free, and you're asking other people to come over uh, to be free, and not really to be free, but to become part of the system so that you can make money for the almighty, corporation that is the United States government.
Mm.
I mean, I love human beings, and I love being a human being. I don't know how it is to be an antelope, but I think being a human is pretty cool. Uh, but I think it's a painful experience knowing that so many other people are in pain. It's hard. Like, if you're really human, if you're really in touch with your humanity, it's normal. Like, when earlier, before we started, I said, how are you doing? And you said, well, I've been kind of irritable all day. And it's like, I think you'd have to be dead inside to not be a bit irritable as a human. I mean, because it's like, it's it has to touch you, what's going on in the world, what's going on with all of us, like the pain of it all. I mean, my God, like, it's crazy what's going on. And so I don't know. I think it's like a painful experience to be human. The older I remember being in Cal Arts, and our dean of the school, I won't say her name, I won't give her power. But anyway, she was like, I met with her one time and she said to me, we just have to get you to stop crying. You know, you just cry, you feel so much, you cry so much. And I remember being offended by that, and I didn't quite understand why I was offended. And then now I know why I was offended. I mean, she was absolutely attacking the core of what it is to be human.
Mhm.
I feel things, you know, I feel things. It's painful. Like, how the hell are you supposed to get through this without, being in pain over so much stuff that's going on in the world, and that, like, on a psychic level is going on with each and every one of us. And the more empathetic you are, the more painful the whole fucking process is of being human, you know? I mean, it takes a lot of guts to get up every day and not to, like, dull your mind with, like, narcotics and alcohol. I think like that's a win. I'm like, hey, we're doing pretty good if we are not, like, completely, zombifying ourselves every day. I think it's a win. So it just takes a lot of guts to be human. It takes a lot of guts to feel, and there's nothing wrong with crying, and because the world is in a lot of pain. I mean, there's a lot of beauty, right? But the world is in a lot of pain. And to deny that, I think, is to deny the very nature of what it means to be human, and to, like, cry when your brother is in pain. Why should we ignore that? Like, if someone is in pain, we should meet them there. We shouldn't try to pretend like that isn't happening, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's part of our culture is, um, that fake it so you make it. Like you're success. You gotta have a presentation of success. You know,
Yeah.
uh, in the movie in American Beauty, what was her name? I can't remember
Annette
that.
Benning.
Yeah, she had this whole thing where she was like slapping herself because she started crying, and she was like, "Stop it! You're weak. You're weak. You're weak." And
Yes.
like, that she have to, and then the guy that she was, the real estate king that she was trying to, that she was fucking or whatever,
Yeah.
he had this whole thing about presenting success at all times, and that's what it is. It's all an illusion. It's the art of the deal.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. And it's become, I think, even worse now that we obviously have all these social medias and stuff. I remember I posted something like maybe a month ago. I posted something about rage.
hmm
And, because there's this sacred rage, right? That my friend Ashley always talks about. She's like, don't don't excuse your sacred rage. Sacred rage is essential. It's the thing that brings forth justice when you have sacred rage, and you can see it through without obviously violence. But um sacred rage is something that can change. I mean, Martin Luther King had sacred rage. It's not like he was walking in there super happy, you know what I mean? Like,
hmm
he
Yeah.
was driven by sacred rage, you know? And so I was writing this whole thing about the importance of rage. And then he was like, there's this guy that chimed in that was like, it's important to control your emotions and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I was basically talking about it had something to do with, the shit going on, and how it's frustrating not to get enraged by this and want things to be different. And you hear, listen, my husband's from Lebanon. Even when we were in Lebanon, one of his little cousins, who was 8 years old, died from a bomb, and this kid, that was intense. That gives me sacred rage. It makes me very angry. And I mean, it should make you angry. I think sadness doesn't really elicit any kind of true growth, and it certainly doesn't inspire change. Sadness, no. I think sadness can make some neat indie folk songs, but I think it's sacred rage that makes people change. I think
Mhm.
it's sacred rage that inspires people. And so whatever, I shared this thing, I was being really honest about it. And he like, jumped all over it, and felt like he needed to tell me how to control my emotions, which I found very racist. And this is why, because it's like, I hear white people all the time, all day long, ranting and raving online, you know what I mean? And then I have one thing I'm saying, and I'm to control yourself, because there's nothing scarier than like a Black woman talking about sacred rage. It's like, the Black people are getting angry. What are we going to do? You know what I mean? But meanwhile, this guy would get on and he would go on a rant about like yogurt land, you know what I mean? Being out of a flavor he didn't like. And I'm talking about like social justice issues and being enraged by stuff. And I'm told to, box it in, reel it in a little bit. And it's like, no. Part of being a human being is being able to have a full spectrum of emotion without being reeled in. Like, can you handle it? Can you handle my full expression of being human? Because I can handle yours. Like, I don't shy away from any of it. Like, I will meet my people where they're at. I don't care if they're screaming, spitting fire, whatever, let's go. And I will, like, I'm going to embrace you, your full spectrum. I just ask for the same in return. But I think too often, especially in America, a Black person raising their voice elicits such fear in people. And I think it must go way back into their DNA, something way back, uprising. It must wake something up way, way deep in people that makes them go, oh gosh, they like quake in their boots. I mean, look at Fran Bennett's a perfect example. I mean, here's this Black woman with this booming voice, and she made more people shake in their boots. She never made me shake in my boots. I remember having conversations with friends and they would be like, she scares me. And I'd be like, what? And these things that scare us, we don't even realize that a lot of these things are tied to systemic racism. They are, it's like Fran Bennett with this booming voice that could shake the walls. For me, was like, that's normal. Yeah. If you meet my father, you'll go, wow, this guy. Or my uncles or my aunts. I mean, they all have these kind of voices. So I'm like, that's just a Black woman's voice. Like, I didn't see anything. I was like, not afraid of it at all. I was like, she's like completely in herself, and she's not talking on top of her voice either, which, as we learned, a lot of women do. They talk like way up here so that, it's not so jarring for people. And, the Kardashians have made
upward
like
inflection on every statement.
Exactly. Like, how are you? I'd like water.
Oh man, I want to get back to the book.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's so much to it. Let's get it into sensuality, because there's some really super sexy stuff, and it's graphic. Yeah. And I mean, it's really graphic. And so what was you went all the way with it?
I did. Do you have a question? I'm just kidding.
I do. But I want to know, like, what, I mean, did you just want to, like, what was your thought process in the sexuality? Like,
well, there's this whole section there. There's a thing that really happened in real life. I was waiting tables. It's in the book, right? I was waiting tables in Studio City, and these two women were sitting there. They're drinking Chardonnay, and one woman took her fork and stabbed me in the ass with it. And I remember. I turned around and was like, what the hell? And she was like, oh my God, it was so juicy. I just had to see if it was real. And I was like, that's crazy. This bitch thinks she can like touch my ass, what, with a fork?
Yeah.
While I'm at work, what? And so then, at the time I didn't realize why I was so enraged. But then as I got the language and I started to understand, I went, oh my gosh, that has to do with ownership. That has to do with, my body is not my body, right? I mean, although my body is my motherfucking body. But when, we're talking about when my ancestors were brought over against their will, in these like cramped slave ships, and enslaved against their will. Their bodies no longer belong to them, right? And then this is something that's been perpetuated throughout history and even to present day, of like, your body doesn't belong to you, right? And that and this is something I dealt with, like, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Like, as a Black woman, you're like a sexual, sphinx, and like, you're down for it, you know what I mean? And it's like, really? No, well, I mean, doesn't have any, I mean, what a strange thing, but that all is tied back to slavery. I mean, 100% that over sexualization of the Black body is completely tied to slavery. And but so that's part of why that stuff is in there for Sassy Slave. The reason why it's in there for the modern time is because, when you're told that you're supposed to do this, when you're told that, like, that's how you're supposed to perform, that your body is made for these sexual things, then that's what you do, and then pretty soon you start to realize, like, this is my body, and I don't have to fuck unless I want to fuck, and I don't have to be somebody's fantasy. I don't have to live up to this, like, these ridiculous things, like the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice, or that, like, wet ass pussy, or, working all day long. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that, and I don't have to do that. And that's cool. So part of me, the sexuality in the book, when it came down to the two best friends, had to do with, that was pure, sensual, consensual love. And that's why it's so raw. And that's why it's I wanted it to be like, damn, because that's like in its purest form. Nobody's telling me how to behave, and no one's telling me how this should go down. This is coming from a place of pure desire without definition. We're going to define it right here in the act. And so, yeah, I hope it made people like squirm a little bit. I mean, that's because it was raw and without history, it was like, in the moment, this is going to be our own thing. That happens like towards not towards the, I guess, the end of the second act. She gets more into her sexuality, and is less like led by the nose in doing what other people want to do with her body. She's more like, okay, now I want to do this with my body. And that's when it, I think, takes off and becomes even more erotic and powerful, because it's always more erotic and powerful when it's your fucking choice. When it's like, hey, I got an idea, I want to go all the way with this idea. Let's go all the way with this idea, rather than someone going like, you should do it like this. Yeah. So
it was intense. Yeah, it really was. And the idea that you named the book S&M, I mean, it has two meanings, sadism and masochism. And then the two main characters, Stella and Maxine. And I thought that was an interesting choice, because there is some discussion in the book about what do you call it, self mutilation to some degree. And I think about that a lot, in my own just kind of mental state, is that, like, being blind, it's sometimes a little pain is good, because it reminds me that I'm alive. And
sure.
And then in this context, it's quite different, but it is an interesting thing how that plays out, because I mean, S&M is ultimately about power and control, and so on. So I thought that was really brilliant, and I appreciated it. There's just so much to this story. I mean, can you kind of just give just a general overview, just so that listeners can kind of get an idea of the arc?
Well, I mean, I'm not really good at that stuff. I mean, I'm really not good at like doing a synopsis. It took me so long to write it. There's a synopsis on Amazon, but
Okay.
but I mean, I can basically say it's the tag that I wrote out was like, every white girl wants a black best friend slash slave.
Mm,
And the journey that Stella has to learn is that she was never anybody's slave.
right.
And that she, maybe her ancestors were, but she has put herself into she has allowed herself to be in a powerless position.
Mm,
She has allowed it, so it really is about a person's journey to self-love, self-discovery, and um, empowerment, and that you don't have to be what your ancestors were. You don't have to relive all this pain.
mm,
You don't have to do it again. You can do something else. You can break the cycle. I mean, it really is about breaking the cycle without talking about, I'm going to break the cycle. It's illustrated. This is how you break the cycle. So
yeah.
that's really what it's about, two besties and this beautiful power struggle, I think, that happens with a lot of best friends. It gets more complicated when it's um, black and white
Mm. Double
in
meaning.
America. In America, yeah. In
Yeah.
America, it gets more complicated because of our history of slavery and racism. I mean, let's just talk about it. You know what I mean? My friend told me about Johnny Cash's wife. She was black, and for the longest time, they were talking about his first wife, not what's her name, June or whatever,
June
but
Carter. Yeah.
not June Carter. The woman before, she was black, but
Mm,
like when he was married to her, and for years and years and years on the internet, they were saying that she was a Sicilian,
mm,
but she wasn't Sicilian. The woman was African American,
mm.
and my friend told me that, and we both were like, "That's crazy." And just recently, they've changed that. Just recently, they've like updated it, like, "Oh yeah, she wasn't,
Mm.
Sicilian. She was African American." Um, but it's like, wow, that's crazy. There's been so much stuff that we just haven't talked about because it makes people uncomfortable. But it's like, the truth is the truth. I mean, this country was founded on slavery. It was colonized, and the indigenous people were murdered. That's what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what happened. Like, those are the facts. We can lie about the genesis of our country, or we can be honest about how this thing came to be, and heal accordingly. We have to heal accordingly. So I think, for me, the book is about, it's this thing. It's like Stella learns the truth of her past so that she can heal accordingly, you
Mm.
know? And it's fun because, it takes place in Hollywood, takes place, we're part of the time in Hollywood, and we're part of the time on
Plantation.
the East. We're in the plantation, in the, when she's, we have flashbacks to this plantation time, like in the antebellum South. And then we are in Maryland for part of the time. So I think it's fun. I mean, I also, when I'm writing it, it's like, I also have to enjoy it. Like, it has to be enjoyable to write. And I
Mm.
hope people enjoy reading it. Like, it's fun to go to those places and to meet interesting characters.
Yeah. I mean, it has so much diversity and just a wide, I mean, it can be brutally cruel. It can be super sexy. It can be hilarious, horrific. I mean, it's just an amazing, it's like you said about the human experience. It has that, diverse range in it. And it's amazing. I'm assuming it's being made into a screenplay, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the next step. So that's what's being worked on. So we'll
Mhm.
see. I mean, I know it's going to happen. I'm very excited about it. There's some things in the works that I can't really
Yeah, I
talk about right
understand.
now,
Yeah,
right? But I
yeah.
do, once it's set, I would love to talk to you about it again, and like, you know.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think this is it's just so beautiful, and it needs to be shared as widely as possible because I mean,
Mhm.
there's I think it could really open the door to a dialogue. I mean, it can be taught in schools and discussed, and like, because it captures uh, your experience in such a beautiful and horrific way, and fun, and all these different, emotions that go along with it. And I think it helps, people see what it's like to be a person of color within this context, this American context, and all of the pain and stress and anxiety, and it's magnificent. And I'm really hope it's made into a film soon.
Wow, thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna cut that little piece out that you just said there, and I'm gonna send it to some people so that they can, it's like, see, we gotta do this right now.
Yeah, I mean, and the timing is perfect, you know.
Yeah, now I feel like people now, I mean, now it's like picking up some steam, because before it was kind of like, oh gosh, this is intense, like this is, whoa, this is intense. And now it's like people are like, oh wow, this makes so much sense, this is awesome. And I'm like, okay, cool, but yeah, so I do think I mean, isn't everything in life all about timing and not giving up? I mean, just
Yeah,
keep, see it through, follow it through. So that's what I'm doing, even though at times it's not so easy to keep the faith, right? But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I just, I hope, I hope that it's produced, and because it needs to be seen. It really does, and heard, and experienced. It's such an amazing, rich experience. And I read it this weekend, and I was just really enthralled by it.
thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, is there a website? I mean, of course, you can go to Amazon if you want to purchase S&M. It's in Kindle and
Yep.
paperback. And is the audio version going to be available?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on the audio thing. I want to like do it well,
Mhm.
and I haven't decided if I'm gonna read it, or I'm gonna hire somebody
I,
to read it. I don't
I
know.
really feel you should read it. I really
Yeah,
do, because it's a much better experience for, I mean, as somebody who's blind, who only listens to books. Although
yeah.
this, I had to use my screen reader because there isn't an audio version. So,
Sorry
but
about that.
I would have, and I want to listen to it in your voice, because I mean, it's just so much better. Like Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, he narrates, and
Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean,
I love that man.
it's,
He's hilarious.
yeah, and I think hearing you read it, it's like hearing, being with you, and sharing that experience. So I hope, please do consider uh
Yeah.
reading the audiobook.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, it comes more down to like, can I do this? Can I? Because there's all these things that you have to do when you're doing an audiobook. It's a certain way that I mean, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah,
I'll do it. I'm gonna do it. It's
please,
gonna be done.
please.
I'm gonna do
Um
it. Yeah.
and is there a website, or just should we go to sarahlouisewilson.com?
Yeah, you can go to sarahlouisewilson.com and it will take you to all the places, Amazon, and where I paint I have a whole bunch of, I'm gonna be launching my Etsy shop later this week with like prints and originals. So that's exciting.
Yeah, now can you share some of the I mean, because heard about a few of them, like you did Frida Kahlo, and what other ones have you done?
Well, I had a online solo exhibition called New Eyes, and
Hmm.
I painted 40 paintings. I did pyrography on wood, like I burned some images that I drew, like Angela Davis,
Hmm.
um, Kwame Ture, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Jimi Hendrix, I mean, Billie
Hmm.
Holiday, Nina Simone. I mean, I painted a whole bunch of stuff. And then I sold a bunch of those, which was very exciting.
Hmm.
So those will be available in print because there's people that want to buy those as prints, which is pretty cool.
And
And
then you're going to
then,
sign them?
well, I have two different types of prints. I have one that's not signed, and then I have
Okay.
signed.
Okay.
So, and then And not all of them will be made into prints, but some of them, like lots of people have asked about Maya Angelou, lots of people have asked about Nina Simone and Martin Luther King. So those will be prints, and they'll be limited edition. They're on like archival museum quality paper, and it's like I don't even know how to say it, but it's Giclee, prints, and they're like very high-end prints. So and we just got like the prints today. We got the Martin Luther Kings, and it looks like exactly like the original. I mean, I can see subtle differences, but it's like, wow, this is a fantastic print. So we're launching that. When I say we, I mean my husband and I. We're launching that by Friday. We're gonna have some places people can go and buy prints, and then I also have a gallery opening coming up soon that I can. That's actually going to be in Santa Clarita. That's pretty cool. And then, which will be on my website. All this stuff will be on my website. So, and I've got some magazine. I've been published in a few magazines. So for the art, and that will be on my website. I'm just waiting for those things to come out, and then I'll post all that. So yeah, everything is at sarahlouisewilson.com. All the stuff.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience of writing S&M. It's I recommend everybody that's listening and watching, please go and purchase S&M. It'll change your life. It's a really important piece of work, and I'm so honored to be able to talk to you about it and be here with you in this moment, in this time. It's a gift. It really is. And I love you very, very, very much. And let's reconnect when you finish the screenplay.
Yeah, I love you too. And thank you so much. And I don't know, just the way that you talk about it, I'm like, you get it. So I'm honored that you took the time to read it. And I'm even more honored that you understand it. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Yes, thank you. All right, everybody. This is The Blind Man in Black. I am your host, Brian Snyder. And if you like the show, please rate, subscribe, and review, or you can watch my wife and I being ridiculous on the exhausting, Snyders on TikTok, the exhausting Snyders on TikTok. And thank you once again, Sarah Louise Wilson. Go to sarahlouisewilson.com. I love you.
I love you too.
All right. All right. Here we have our awkward ending. Here we go. We're going to go back to being totally irritated. You ready?
Okay.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Irritation. Here we go.
Oh my God. I love it.